So I'm really looking forward to this. And um, I want to preempt by saying that we typically, as I mentioned to Lloyd, we show the film that we have lined up as part of an experience that could last anywhere from 90 minutes to 3 hours. Today, we're going to shorten that experience. And the reason why we do it this way is because the film is called Healing People, Heal the Planet. And my organization, AHAM Education, the work that we do is on the intersection. We do many things, but essentially, our work is centered on providing um, tools, practices, experiences that cultivate well being, emotional intelligence, resiliency. And when we talk about resiliency, we talk about a broader definition of resiliency. So it's not environmental resiliency, it's not just resiliency, emotional resiliency, it's all of it and how those are connected. How our well-being is intrinsically connected to the well-being of the planet. And even though we may know this, that the way we go around solving the problems of the world, whether it's related to our own mental health and well-being or related to climate change, that we have to approach it from this big R definition of resiliency. And so in the work that we do, we work with climate stakeholders, activists, politicians, um, researchers, youth, community, to create experiences of restoring connection to nature, but doing this in an embodied way. And so when I say embodied, it means that it's a practice of, you can say that it's part of a mindfulness practice, whatever you call it, based on whatever your kind of faith or indigenous tradition is. But it's this notion that I am not separate from the earth, and that when I am here, I'm fully here. My heart, my body, my mind is in the same place at the same time. So it's a very kind of presence based approach, but it's also expansive in the way, expansive and inclusive of my natural environment and across space and time to my ancestors and to humanity. So it's really kind of bringing in this kind of unified experience in the present moment. So the film Healing People, Heal the Planet are just documenting some of the stories of how we've infused that into our work um, with these different stakeholders. And what is the impact? The impact is you have climate activists who are less burnt out, who understand that they have to prioritize that well-being because it impacts the way that they advocate and they negotiate. Um, and on the flip side, community members, primarily BIPOC, so BIPOC is Black, Indigenous, people of color here in the United States, but really communities that are typically marginalized that may not be paying attention to the day, because they have other day-to-day um, realities, or they may be excluded from the process, that they can become agents of change. And the doorway to that is again through well-being, through helping them restore lost connection to nature, to, in our case, in our community, restoring connection to a historically Black beach, and understanding how a lot of the patterns and systems over time have intentionally worked to sever those connections and create disconnection. Um, and why is it important to focus on that before we could begin to talk about, well, the community needs to be engaged in climate change? Well, how do you get them there? You get them there by engaging them in the process. So I am going to, I actually have, the film is 20 minutes long, and I am going to pull it up And so after the film, we'll have an opportunity to talk a little bit about your reactions, but we'll go through a simple process of embodied practice, what we call inviting embodied action. And there's a whole framework and whatnot that's behind this, but I won't bore you with the the intellectual stuff. I really want you all to have an experience um, of what it is to engage in embodied action, whatever your sphere of influence and activity is. So, if you give me 1 second, I'm gonna see if I can play it straight from YouTube. So, here we go. Where did it go? Here we go. Can you hear that, Lloyd?
Yes, sounds good.
We're in the front lines. We know more than most people do about what's actually happening, and it's depressing. It's like you're watching this house, watching it on fire, and only a few people seem to know that it's happening, and everybody else is like, yeah, whatever.
We have to be aware that we are fighting a mountainous battle, and it takes a lot of commitment.
Sometimes I can get disconnected and just I feel scattered and I feel like all over the place. And if I can just remember and I breathe and I go outside and I go look at my garden, reconnecting to the earth.
Dear Mother Earth, I bow my head before you as I look deeply and recognize that you are present in me and that I am a part of you. You are present in every cell of my body. My physical body is your physical body, and just as the sun and stars are present in you, they are also present in me. You are not outside of me, and I am not outside of you. You are more than just my environment. You are nothing less than myself.
We live in a world that's ridden by disconnection, grief, anxiety, especially around the ecological crisis. AHAM Education as an organization is using mindfulness and contemplative healing practice as a tool to really help activists who are on the front lines manage their grief and their anxiety, and to tap into this connection with nature as a way to approach this work from a place of love rather than fear, from a place of hope rather than despair.
We are now going to transition to the mindful beach cleanup.
We host this mindful beach cleanup because we wanted to create an experience for folks who are already engaged in healing to discover for themselves that healing oneself is not separate from healing the planet. That actually, when we are deeply connected to the present moment, when we are in a contemplative space, we discover that there is no boundary between the human body and the earth body. By offering this opportunity, not just to practice healing in nature, but to practice healing of nature, we're creating activists out of people who are practicing mindfulness or other forms of healing for themselves.
I'm a practitioner of this work, of mindfulness, of gathering here at the beach every Sunday with with a community of practice for a better world in terms of climate, in terms of what we leave behind for our children.
Thank you, Nellie.
Yes. So I am curious. I'd like to spend a few minutes, and I have to change my view because I can't see everyone. I'm in speaker view. Here we go. Yes. So, yeah, I'm curious just to hear from all of you just what showed up for you, what came up for you as you saw the film. And if you could share just what part of the world you're in, that would be helpful also. And I can't share a link to the film, because it's a private film that we're only screening with private audiences, or because there are all kinds of red tape when you have to enter different film festivals and whatnot. So we've decided for this year to keep it private, and then we'll probably release it publicly next year. And we're creating a series starting next year with other stories.
Mhm.
So that's all. You're all welcome to participate in that. But yeah, if we could just go back to that question of what arose in you, and if we could stay out of our heads in terms of what we know about climate change and all that, just really kind of staying with what arose in you, what did it trigger, like what did you feel in your body, what arose in your heart as you watched the film. So,
So
Suman.
I'd like to perhaps start. I have seen it once before, and this is the reason I wanted to also invite you back to have this film showcased for our own members within UnityNet as well. It was a profound experience for me the first time, and even seeing it again, it really hammers home the that um, essence of understanding this connection we have with Mother Nature, and having, I think there not nearly enough uh, people in the world have understood that connection. And that is actually part of the reason why we are doing our own work as well, to establish these spaces in communities, for communities to come together and sit in the circles of in the gardens and really reconnect with them, with each other, reconnect with their watersheds. And so I think there's an alignment between what you do, what we do, and what we're, I think, overall trying to achieve as sort of we go through this massive shift, I think, in the economy and in our relationships. Um, so trying to, I think, in many ways, to sort of prevent an unraveling, um, as many people sort of consider what's going on right now, as a bit of a chaos that it's so difficult um, to predict what the future might be. But I think, like as the film says, we need to embrace the now, the moment, and maintain that hope for the better future, regardless of the current situation, and our agency, if we can come together. Because I think, as the film also said about, there is power in the numbers, the people working together, to create the change we all want. But I think a lot of people just don't understand how to get from here to there.
Thank you. Suman?
Very nice film and well connected to the viewing audience and the different situations and conversations. What I understood or experienced is we are nature, but we are thinking we are superior or we are different from nature and all, but we are nature, we are all together. Nature needs us and also uh, needs both and both. But ultimately, nature will win. We cannot win. We are only helping, only doing something, but ultimately, the nature will win. We see so many uh, cyclones or anything. Ultimately, nature is winning. We are not, but we are thinking we are achieving, we are developing, we are building the 5 trillion economy, we are building dams, so many things. But going where we are heading, up to what extent nature is observing and it is reacting. We have to take care of nature, then only it will take care. Otherwise, there is no way. And mindfulness is all about inner peace and all. Nature is uh, gives everything. There is a famous quote by our Mahatma Gandhi, father of nation of India. Nature has everything for man's need, but not for man's greed. This famous quote. He told nature has everything for man's need, but not for man's greed. We are becoming so greedy. We are exploiting nature and things. But nature has everything for man's need. But we are, that's all I want to say.
Thank you, Dr. Suman. It was a little bit difficult to hear your voice there, but I saw, Valerie, you put up your hand briefly. There she goes again.
Thank you, Suman.
Yes. Yes, thank you, Suman. By the way, Suman, there is a Learn with Grandma group for India. I felt very personal on listening to that film. Tomorrow I'm going down to Cardiff to meet my new little great-granddaughter. I have now 8 great-grandchildren, 7 grandchildren, and of course my own 3 children. I'm nearly 83. I'm coming towards the last stage of my life. And in this last stage, I want to achieve a little something. I want to share that we are losing so much. When I was a little girl, we used to go to my grandmother's for lunch, and I would pick bunches of wild flowers to take to her. She used to get out her crystal vase that she got from Ireland, cut crystal glass, to put my wild flowers in. She obviously didn't see them as valuable, but she wanted to please me. Now, all of the fields where those flowers grew are built upon. We've lost 97% of wildflower meadows in Britain. That may be a little thing, but it's huge, because as we lose that wildness, we lose the animals, we lose the little mammals, we lose the bees. When I was in Uganda recently, I saw the swallows, and I thought, fly safely back to my country. Not one has arrived yet. Under my eaves, my cottage is 300 years old, and under the eaves, the swallows and swifts have nested for generation after generation. I'm worried that this will be the 3rd year running that no little birds will be born under those eaves. We are losing so much, but we can save it if we just take a little more care. Just a little more care. We think as individuals we can't do anything because we're just little. I'm just a little old granny living in a Welsh hill village, but I'm sharing this message, and I'm sharing it around the world. And all I say to people is, plant a tree for Granny. I did this 2 years ago when it was my 80th, and over 2 million trees were planted. A drop in the ocean, but every drop in the ocean will count. So, will you all please plant a tree for Granny? My birthday's on the 4th of July. You don't have to plant it on the 4th of July, but I just love the idea that millions of people in America and on the American continent are going to celebrate my birthday. They don't know it, but I know it. So I would say, God bless you all.
So thank you very much, Valerie. Actually, we have recently talked about something that we've been wanting to do within and with all the members of UnityNet, where we had proposed some time ago that every person on their birthday, and this was actually inspired by you, Valerie, every person in our network on their birthday should request as the gift that they've been given to plant the same number of trees as the number of years of their birthday. So if I turn 50, I should plant 50 trees on my birthday. When I turn 51, I ask people to plant 51 trees for me. When I turn 52, plant 52 trees for me. And over a lifetime, if every person on the planet were to do that, could you imagine the number of trees we would plant? And if you do the calculation, that's if the average age globally is 30 years old, 30 times 8 billion, that's 240 billion trees would be planted every year if everybody on Earth did that. Just plant 1 tree per year you're alive on your birthday. Ask that as your gift. We could plant hundreds of billions of trees every year.
Just one little thing I'd like to add to that, and that is that we also need land for farming. And there's a great hoo-ha in Wales at the moment because the Welsh government want farmers to give a 10% of their land. And actually, we don't have enough land in Wales, in Britain, to feed all our people. having just come back from Uganda, I know that there they have no poverty of food. They have poverty in other ways, but they have enough food to feed all of their people and export. So don't plant on good farming land. Don't plant on land where you can grow vegetables. I grow vegetables in my garden, and I eat them too. So plant on marginal land. And what I've started to do is plant little, when I see little trees growing, I will pick some and plant them where there aren't any, on verges. So because there the trees will grow and not take away from land. So, and Wales, of course, is a mountainous little country. We're a very tiny country. It's only got a population of 3.25 million. So there's not many of us. But what the Welsh government decided many years ago was to plant a forest in Uganda. And that forest now exists. It's on one mountain. So we have little mountains. We have the smallest mountains in the world, but to us they're very important. But we can plant there. And the ancients did plant on that land. They cut it down during the Neolithic period, but we can't farm above about 600 feet in Wales because the weather is too harsh. So plant trees where you can't plant vegetables. That's my other little plea. And yes, do plant a tree for yourself as well as plant one for me.
Well, and the other
You,
thing of
Valerie, I just wanted to jump in, be, both because I have to leave soon and also because I was hoping to have some time to do a practice with you all. Because everything that you're saying, we're here preaching among the choir, right? The key is how do we this is the underlying sort of the message here, and I'm sure you all connect to this deeply, which is why you're able to why you care, first of all, and why you take the time. And so the challenge has been, you know, the movement, the climate change movement right now is predominantly operating based on using fear, uh, um, language of lack and despair. And it's all true because, as Valerie said, we are losing a lot. However, what we're proposing is that rather than try to invite action through doom and gloom, what we have found, and it works, is that when we invite rather um, a restoring of connection, whether it's connection to the earth that I occupy, or connection to each other, or connection to the reality that we are not separate and we are not separate from the earth. It's very different to the way we think and operate in daily life. But when we invite that type of consciousness, even in our activism of planting the tree. So, for instance, we do an activity that was in the film called the Mindful Beach Cleanup. It's not just cleaning up the beach, it's an embodied form of action. It's action that's also for our own spiritual well being, development. So, when we connect it in a holistic way, then the falling in love happens. So, our framework is called the eco-affinity framework. So, in that framework, the awareness is the first step. So that awareness of the oneness, of the connection, is really, you know, Suman was talking about greed. That greed comes from forgetting that we already belong to the earth. When we forget that as humans, we suddenly believe that we can exploit, that we can extract, that we can gain something. But when we fall upon the realization that I'm not separate, there's nothing for me to take. I just use what I need and I give back, right? It's a completely different orientation. So, yes, this is kind of like the more kind of philosophical, seemingly longer route, but it's the more sustainable route. because then we're up with the awareness comes the falling in love. You take a walk in the woods, Valerie, you pick those wildflowers, and in that moment, that precious connection that you feel is what we need to bring back to the younger generations, and even to the politicians and the businessmen. Because when we take a walk in the park, we feel it, but do we carry that into the way that we interact in the world? So we call that eco-affinities, that the falling in love that happens naturally when we remember that we're connected. And then from that eco-affinity leads to eco-action. And it can be something calculated, like we have a campaign to mindfully plant trees around the world, or it could become part of our lifestyle because now we're living in this way, right? We're living in deep harmony and connection to the earth, like many of our indigenous brothers and sisters still do today, because they don't see themselves as separate from the earth body that they're occupying. So it's also about recognizing the undoing that needs to happen. What are the structures, the systems, the paradigms that has led us to this place? And I'll let Joan speak, and then I'll close with a practice. How's that sound? Okay, very good.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Well, I agree with everything and I disagree with some things, but it doesn't matter if we agree or disagree. It's all about what do we do? How do we take personal responsibility for our place here? And my experience showed that a lot of people are unaware, like you said, Kaylee. How do you pronounce your name?
Nellie.
Nellie, sorry. So the unawareness about the environment is so vast because people are trying to live their lives and have a living. So the environment comes in secondly, or the earth comes in third or fourth or whatever, because of the survival that people think they have to keep up with the Joneses. Call it whatever you want, greed, whatever. But how they look at it is that they're trying to survive and have a basic lifestyle, right? So what we did was, instead of doing the doom and gloom in 2003 when we started the foundation, was to make being an environmentalist fun. So I was a non-white when I was going to environmental meetings, and they were mostly, I was the only non-white. They were so elitist about being an environmental, whatever you want to call them, and it was like, they would have people in the audience, and they would put down if you did things, and they would speak in acronyms, and everybody felt displaced. And I was like, no, I don't want to be part of this. I don't want we're all going to hell in a handbasket messaging, because that's not what I'm about. So we started the foundation to be gentle and making awareness and make it personal. So how do you feel when you did something good? How did you feel when you walked? Like, make them feel. We had the garden, come and eat and try new things. Pick some herbs and make your own tea. And we'd have china pots, and they'd make their own tea, and they felt really fantastic. And they would talk to other people and said, oh, isn't this great? Because we forget about connections. It's not just connections to the environment, it's connection to each other, whether your class, everybody's put all these class and religion, all this kind of stuff, but we're all still people at the end of the day. And so we found that was a really, you don't know that much about me, but we had a garden, and we took a social aspect to the garden. I'm East Indian, and I was used to having lots of people and lots of food, and and music and dancing. And so we recreated that. And I live in Canada, and Canadians were like, yeah, my grandparents used to do this, not my parents, my grandparents used to do this. And so I think that so for us, we promoted environmentalism, but it was more of what can I do in their own capacity, as opposed to dictate to them what to do. It's like, what can you do, and let them define it. So I don't want to go anymore because I know we have time, but that was just our approach.
I'll just say that that's very similar to what we do. We do have a very structured programs that don't feel structured because a lot of they're nature-centered, mindfulness-based immersion. So one of the participants spoke in the film. We have do something called Be Nature courses and retreats, and I hope to be able to invite you all to the ones that we do online, which they're online, but they're inviting. The practices are essentially designed to, it's a container for folks to come back to themselves and to experience that connection. And we do a lot of restorative practice, a lot of circle dialogue, but then there's always an action component, because getting folks there is the first step, but then allowing them a space to make a commitment and to hold each other accountable for the commitments, even if it's, when I go grocery shopping, I'm going to buy fruit that's not packaged in plastic. That alone over a person's lifetime can make a difference, right? Yeah. And so for some people it's that, but we've also had people who become politicians as a result of, I'm falling in love with this park that I come and I practice and I find my sustenance, my well-being. Now I want to do something about it. And so this person, we have a local politician who's leading the charge on the right to clean water in the state of Florida, and a whole bunch of other initiatives. Where did that start? It started from giving this person a space to come and practice in a community of practice every week. And so the things we do for love is more and more sustainable than the things we do for hate and fear and judgment.
Yeah.
So I'm really, really grateful. I apologize that, yeah, I wanted to honor Loy's request to do this sooner rather than later, because then I am traveling for 12 days, and then high level political forum is coming up. And so I'm involved in all of these things, but happy to do this again with more people, with other groups. And perhaps we can plan for you all to get a full experience of what we actually, some of the practices that you can even take into your spaces, or perhaps mirroring some of what you might already be doing. So I'll just close in the next few minutes. I want to invite you all just in a really simple practice that can allow us to check ourselves during the day and for us to restore a moment to moment connection to the nature outside of us and inside of us. So I invite you to either close your eyes, or you can lower your gaze if you'd rather keep your eyes open. Let your feet be firmly planted. So if your limbs are crossed, uncross them. And just taking a moment to allow all that has been discussed and seen and experienced to settle, holding on to nothing and trusting that the knowledge will arise when we need it. Feeling the feet, the sensation of the feet touching the ground. Appreciating the ability to feel the feet, and appreciating the ground that supports this body. The earth that supports this body. And this body, which is also a piece of earth. Allowing your awareness to expand to the limbs, the torso, the head, neck, shoulders. Just checking in without trying to change or fix anything. Just noticing what is present in this body. sensations, pleasant, unpleasant. There might be thoughts floating in the mind, emotions in the heart. Bringing your attention now to the breath. Sensing the breath moving in the body. An expansion in the lungs on the in-breath, contraction on the out-breath. This breath that always breathes the body. This generous breath. This breath that we share with the trees, and remembering that the ground that we're supported by unites all of us. We all stand on the same ground. Underneath the ground are the roots of the trees, the remnants of beasts of our ancestors. And one day we too will return to the earth and become part of this ground that supports those that come after us. And so just allowing a sense of appreciation for this body, for the earth body, for all who have contributed to this earth body, and for all who will one day become part of this earth. Taking a nice deep breath as we bring this practice to a close. Allowing your eyes to open if they were closed. That was a really short practice. You could also just allow a phrase to sit in your mind. I am Mother Earth, and Mother Earth is me. We do all of these kinds of practices just to, again, provide a vehicle for that connection, and we try to do this in nature as much as we can. But we can use the power of visualization and imagination to invoke that connection as well. And the subconscious mind doesn't really know the difference. So, so thank you all so much. I've put my email in the chat, and feel free to reach out to me for anything at all. And when we have our next, or on the fall, we're going to be launching some programs. And we really want folks that are actively working on the front lines or in whatever capacity, like you all are, to be among the first groups that it's going to be like a curated invite. So I'm thinking, Lloyd, I'll reach out to you when that becomes available and you can share with folks if they want to be a part of it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Nellie, so much for hosting that session with us today. I'm looking at the screen. I'm not seeing Michael, our second speaker. He's noting to me on WhatsApp. He says, I have a weak network at my side. He has not been able to log on with us today. So again, thank you, Nelly. I know you need to run off.
My taxi's gonna be here in like 6 minutes.
Okay,
So
so thank you, and we'll hopefully have you on again.
yes, I'd
we
love
will
to.
move forward with the, as we call them, the youth peace routes, where we established the youth peace gardens and forests. Thank you, Joan, for that as well. That a new part of our portfolio will be the forests that we want to plant as what we call 3D polyculture food forests, and mostly they should be planted in and around our cities, not on the productive farmland necessarily, but where we live, because these ideas of creating these communal spaces, the unity gardens, are intended to be where people live, to be creating these communal spaces, these shared spaces where people can come together and share in nature, in the natural systems of our planet, creating habitats for those birds, for those bees, for nature to be in and around with us in our cities, in our communities, in our towns, and in our villages, and then establishing these networks of connection to each other through the digital tools like we're using today, but moving even beyond that. So this is where I'm working with Nelly as an example of creating these learning circles. And we want to, and that is actually where I'd like to share my screen briefly. I won't go through the entire presentation, but I want to share my screen once more so that people can see and I can move on with the actual presentation. So we've done our first presentation. We've done introductions already, that a little bit out of order from my presentation. You can ignore that save chat. That does not work at this time. I am going to put in at least the information about Michael Kakule, who was supposed to be doing our second presentation, which we don't have on with us today. Unfortunately, the internet connection is a little bit bad for that. But I do want to go through at least one more slide before we jump off. So what I wanted to do was to tell a little bit about what's upcoming in UnityNet. The whole point of creating the community Unity Garden learning spaces in every local community of UnityNet is in order to create these hybrid spaces, the real world and virtual, where new opportunities for innovation and collaboration can happen, especially in the physical realms of our own local communities, watersheds, and bioregions, our physical environments where we live, where the reason where we are now in this process of designing what we call story pods, these AI-enabled devices in order to help enable us as humans in all our local communities, and especially with young people on all continents, along with the elders across generations, is to harness the collective intelligence of humanity in ways that were once impossible. Because in this next phase of humanity, this will be all about how we can reimagine our living environments in a net zero world, such that we can continue our path toward thriving on this planet, even in a much hotter and more destabilized climate. In other words, it's about finding ways of adaptation through rethinking our infrastructures and our production systems and our relationships with each other and the rest of nature, with the common term being all our relations to describe that convergence. So the next thing we do after establishing the youth peace routes of these youth peace gardens and forests in all of these continents. So starting here in North America, but also in Asia and Africa at the same time, ideally, or perhaps in some cases concurrently, is to establish the community unity hubs, these income generating water and food production, training and distribution centers with perhaps things like cold storage and medical facilities and more, all run with renewable energy, mostly solar, and the what we call CSAF centers, the climate smart ag and food training centers, established as the Unity Peace Centers in each of the local communities of UnityNet. It's managed by these multi-stakeholder partnerships that we help you to create locally in these what we call INAP collaborative empowerment teams that include the public, the private, the civil society, like the Rotary Clubs and the YMCA and other local partners, and the CBO partnerships, the thing that Lisa Anise is putting together, along with the academic and the orange economy and the interfaith and the indigenous and importantly, the finance sectors, all coming together at the local level to deliver the practical solutions that are needed, especially in terms of the education and training to help accelerate the transformation of our own communities toward this net zero vision and the achievement of, as we say, all of these global goals as much as possible as part of the unfolding of this new era in human history. So with regards to what comes next, we have several things on our agenda. So this event will be followed up with a few others, including our June 5th, 2024, the World Environment Day, UnityNet Abraham Project, these internationally coordinated Tree of Peace and Reconciliation tree planting ceremonies. So we'll also be having some additional discussions and events intended to establish a planning committee for the youth peace routes. That's a project we're doing where we want to have a Pedal for Peace campaign. So we need an organizing committee on 3 continents, Turtle Island here in Canada and the USA, in Africa or Kebulan, and in South Asia, starting with India and Sri Lanka, most likely, although I also expect some interest from our teams in Nepal and maybe from Pakistan and Bangladesh as well. We also have some discussions related to the establishment of a UnityNet interfaith partnership network. So I've been in dialogue with a few others, including one of our colleagues in Ottawa and a pastor in Italy who seems interested to start this discussion. I hope that there'll be great interest in this new network, especially from those who are in Africa, but not exclusively from there. We'll also need to organize a second Indigenous review panel event and discussion for our projects as well. As some of you may recall, we had our first Zoom meeting on May 3rd, which was attended by about 9 people, including a gentleman from the Chippewa Nation, but he never got a chance to speak at that original meeting. That was just before I went on holidays a week and then to Ottawa, where I also met with about a dozen others in the Ottawa-Gatineau area at a restaurant on the morning of Sunday, May 12th. So I'll be going back to Ottawa late in July. I don't have exact dates yet, but these are some of the very important conversations that we're having within UnityNet right now, along with the establishment of our mentor coaches network, which will be established very soon after this event today, most likely by the end of this week, especially since we're also discussing a possible project out in Western Canada, in British Columbia, which also has the potential for us to establish some twin projects as well in various places along these youth peace routes on the 3 continents. So there's lots to do right now where there may be many more chances to engage if you can establish an INAB collaborative team locally in your own local watershed or bioregion. So one thing that I do want to mention at this time is the important event that's coming up on June 5th on World Environment Day. So in about 2 weeks, it is the day that is intended to be our biggest event of the year, our UnityNet Abraham Project Coordinated Tree of Peace and Reconciliation tree planting ceremonies in all our local communities. So if you've never planted a tree of peace and reconciliation before, I'd ask that you should consider it. If we do have some guidelines, I can send them to you. If you request them, connect to me directly, and I can also place a link on SlideShare with the instructions and guidelines for planting a tree of peace and reconciliation and doing that ceremony. So if you've already planted a tree of peace and reconciliation in your community in the past, please feel free to simply invite people out to that gathering with some key members of your family and your community around the tree of peace and reconciliation that you planted in the past. So this is likely that what we will be doing here in the Greater Toronto area, possibly going back to a tree that we planted in previous years, doing a ceremony to acknowledge the promises and ambitions that were made at that time. But whatever you might do, please let us know ahead of time so we can also promote your community when we do our marketing and promotions for the Abraham Project ahead of June 5th, which is only in about 2 weeks' time. So please also note that for every tree of peace and reconciliation that is planted, and the gardens or the forests that surround that tree can also be transformed into a youth peace garden or forest just by planting a peace pole in or near the tree in the garden and recording a GPS coordinate location for that tree and sending it to us at UniNet International, where we'll map it on our sacred site and watershed map for all people to see globally at any time of year. So, of course, any youth peace garden that is ultimately established anytime this year will also be included as part of our UniNet Youth Peace Routes and should be twinned with at least one other local community youth peace garden or forest in any other part of the world, whether it is another youth peace garden in your own local community, in the same watershed, in another watershed, in the same bioregion, or at another, even on another continent. So we'll also want to see all of our youth peace gardens and forests eventually have a direction sign planted in the garden, pointing the users of that youth peace garden or forest toward the twins that are in the other communities, with the sign also including the next closest garden or forest on the youth peace route on your own continent. So people can then follow these youth peace gardens and forests and create the youth peace routes as an activity for peaceful tourism. So I wanted to as well just put in a little bit of a note in the chat based on what I just said. Now I could go on or I could stop here. I'm seeing the time is just after 12. I have about 24 more pages in this old presentation that was adapted for this event, and where I could once again review the things that were presented already to our members during the Sunlight Spectacle 2024 event that took place on Monday, April 8th, the start of the practical action for reconciliation and re-indigenization related to our UniNet and AYAGBA process of globalizing the global goals. However, given the time and the number of people left on the call, I think what I will likely do is to stop the presentation here, and we will wrap up, but I will include all of the additional slides as well as so that what we have is a full presentation, and I will put that up on SlideShare so everybody can see all of the slides that we have in this full presentation of our event today. So thank you all for coming on with us. I'm seeing there's only a couple of people left. Thank you, Joan. Thank you, William.
Okay, bye-bye.
And
Thanks a lot. Great session.
We'll have a follow-up discussion as well with everybody that was on the call. I'll send the chat to everybody when Stephanie sends it to me, and share again this on SlideShare. And after events, I have a few follow-ups already for this week. Thank you and have
Okay.
a great day.
Bye-bye.